The opening of Kizumonogatari is the most perfect anime movie opening I've ever seen. It unfolds as an intricately choreographed cinematic poem, each scene deliberately made to unsettle, inform, and immerse the viewer in such a unique manner. The film begins with a striking image. A date floats on a vivid red background, its text specifying a span from Sunday through Friday the 26th of March to the 7th day of April, as a clock ticks with deliberate precision. The red hue shifts into black and a single word appears. Vampire. In a matter of seconds, that word is replaced by an equally relevant word in French, tragédie, followed by histoire. And finally the words fade into monochrome inverted, this time in Japanese. This rapid sequence of title cards lists thematic keywords, preparing the viewer for what they should expect, but it also immediately signals an inversion of familiar opposites, setting the tone for a narrative where darkness and light, life and death, are in constant contradictory dialogue. This idea evidenced by the conformity of a past stuck in historic balance and a tragedy so great it involves the supernatural. As the darkness of the screen turns into a pure white of unforeseen purity, the calls of crows can be heard in the distance. A wide fisheye lens shot of a single tree, spinning in what appears to be a white void, as gentle dust particles drift across and then fall down onto the camera's lens. We know for a fact that the movie is animated, yet propelled by something we are given the feedback of a physical space, emphasizing that even though the film is unmistakably animated, it is imbued with the texture and weight of something grounded in reality. One esoteric and complex, and most certainly driven by folklore and myth. This spinning tree suspended in emptiness is a symbol of both the self and the cycle of decay and rebirth, a visual metaphor that subtly echoes the film's themes of transformation and inversion, a narrative which sits at the core of its plotline as it involves the inversion of roles multiple times. I'd say it's very poignant in its execution, and it comes back into tying it together with the perfect ending the trilogy has. Abruptly, the shot cuts to a close-up of an elevator door slowly opening, with a loud ding sound, informing the viewer the elevator has arrived indeed on the correct floor. In that instant, the face of a young, terrified man comes into view, fangs barely visible in the dim light that is inside the elevator. His expression is raw, his breath audible as he exhales in a labored, almost panting manner. The scene then shifts to reveal a large circular room bathed in incandescent light, the lens capturing flares and reflections that underscore an almost futuristic yet decaying environment. Almost liminal, I would say. We can already point out a stylistic choice here, and that is juxtaposing the computer-generated and rough, realistic materials with the softly animated characters. This shot quickly reveals itself to be an identical shot to the previous one, but from a different angle as the door of the elevator opens. The young man breathes out, labored, almost panting, as he throws around sharp glares around the room, paranoically looking for something. Yet we as the audience do not know what yet. A close-up of his eye reveals the twitching of his muscle as the eye jumps around from one corner to another. Noir. It says black in French on the screen. The scene cuts abruptly, almost like a silent film, with the persistent sound of film reel still rolling in the background. What does it all mean? We as the audience are left with so many questions, which upon further watch will be answered. But the direction does an excellent job of not isolating the audience from the ideas they present, although the audience hasn't yet become accustomed to the concepts. The narrative then leaps back to the tree. Now the tree appears not in isolation but within the confines of a building. The camera spins slowly and dizzyingly around it, and at this point a drone-like bass-heavy piece of music emerges, a repeating two-note motif punctuated by breaks that mirror the disjointed rhythm of the editing. The film cuts to a perfectly circular command panel featuring two buttons, one to call the elevator down and one to call it up. As the panel spins in synchronicity with the tree, the perspective shifts once again. This time we are viewing the scene from above, watching the young man pass by the control panel in perfect, almost symmetrical alignment. The next sequence finally reveals his face in full. He appears as a teenager dressed in a plain beige pants, a brown hoodie layered over a white shirt and a pendant that hints at a deeper symbolism. As he walks towards the camera, his movements are rendered with painstakingly detail. Every fold, crease, and subtle shift in fabric is animated to capture the nuance of his body language. An incredibly fast pan cuts to what appears to be the window outside, then quickly transitions to a low-angle shot of his shoes, their rhythmic contact with the ground echoing through a vast office building-like space. His shoelaces bounce with each step, a minor detail that intensifies the foreboding atmosphere, as though each step is both measured and laden with imminent consequences. A shot from afar suggests he is being stalked from a balcony, but we never see who or what could be up there. We just see him from above, walking rhythmically forward. The camera cuts to his distressed face. Beads of sweat stream down his cheeks as the tension mounts. Another cut shows he's frantically scanning his surroundings, his gaze shifting, his hair pulled back in a moment of urgency as he aggressively turns his head. What drives this palpable fear? Another quick cut captures his eye in extreme close-up, the twitch of a muscle, the darting glance toward an unseen threat. The sequence alternates between close-up, wide shot, and then back to close-up, with such precision that his body seems to symmetrically cover different parts of the screen with every movement, the blocking doing a superb job of conveying his movements along with the superb animation involved. The film then revisits the tree once more. This time the camera has reached its base now. Wind can be heard howling. The sound of howling wind accompanies a shot from directly above his shoulders as he climbs a set of stairs. His breathing grows more frantic each step, filled with urgency and dread. The scene cuts to a seemingly endless spiral staircase. The top is shrouded in darkness. Even as the camera spins, conveying a sense of relentless motion, the staircase appears infinite, a labyrinth with no escape. In one particularly striking shot, the staircase reflects in his eyes. With each light bulb glimmering like a distant star, his pupil shrinks and widens in reaction to each passing light, almost like he's getting more excited. The feeling of the gradual build-up feels stronger. As the tension builds, the film cuts again, this time from a downwards perspective, a few steps above him. It becomes almost an aerial shot, as we're looking down on him, revealing him becoming even more tense as he climbs. He nears the top, his hand extends, and with a series of extremely rapid shots, he glances behind him, an almost desperate check of his surroundings, before the scene returns to the endless staircase. A small sign indicating that he's on the 4th floor appears briefly as he passes a bright light. In a fleeting moment, the staircase reappears in frame, only to be replaced by a shot of a singular radiant light in an endless void, reminiscent of the sun or a distant star. This light baits in his face, casting dramatic illumination from above, and in that moment his fangs become visible once again, an echo of the earlier elevator shot. They look supernatural, almost vampiric. Could this be the reason for his worries? He breathes heavily, his eye flickering as it cuts to a shot of him climbing the darkened stairs, covered in darkness, walking towards eternal light. Something heavenly at the top. The light rings powerfully as his steps echo the room. A violin kicks in. As we can see him approaching, he flinches at the light shining on his face and breathes out, revealing his fangs once again. A slow motion shot of his feet climbing up. He reaches and it cuts to yet again a black shot with the text "Mehr Licht" shown on screen. Translates to "more light." It cuts again to the light taking the shape of a straight line as it's amplifying heavenly, and yet another shot of his eye, widening happily. He reaches his hand and rests himself upon a giant metal door. The crack in the door is letting in light into the room. He rests for a second as it cuts to the door, revealing this is the 8th floor of the building. We can see sweat drip down his face as he stands with his head against the door, looking at his feet. The screen abruptly cuts to black. The sound of the door opening can be heard. His uncertainty felt as he pushes on the heavy door. It opens fully to reveal a sky choked with grey clouds. His eyes struggle to adjust as shafts of brilliant light repeatedly blind him. With each blink, his vision falters, and he steps out into this harsh, luminous world. The camera trails behind him. His hoodie flutters upward in the wind, clinging to his body with the persistence of a second skin. The next shot captures a solitary crow soaring across the sky and cawing as it settles on a branch from a tree. It turns to reveal its missing one eye. A haunting absence, but one followed by an utterly serene moment. The young man finds a moment of stillness as he sits and gazes the cloudy expanse, watching in awe. His hair animated in the turbulent wind as it whizzes by, pushing each strand into the expanse. The electronic music that rises is one of the most beautiful pieces I've heard, and composes the background of an ambience that carries a strange sentiment of comfort, contrasting with the stark reality of his situation. The scene shifts again, now focusing on the crown of dead tree laden with crows. A rapid succession of shots alternating between his eye, various angles of the crows, and finally an aerial view reveals thousands of dark birds assembling on the roof of the building. The camera pans upwards, revealing that the tree from the opening sequence is no isolated anomaly. It dominates the building's space, growing from its roof, from its courtyard, its branches entangled with the building itself, as different bodies of crows can be seen sitting on antennas, radio towers, and air conditioners. Thousands of hundreds of dark crows. Another shot from an aerial point of view shows the protagonist shocked. The sounds of helicopter blades can be heard almost like this is seen from afar. Several aerial shots go by and then it's black to noir. Moments later, a shot shows 4 Japanese flags waving in the wind, followed by more glimpses of the building. Brief images of a crow perched in a cluster. The protagonist descending a flight of stairs with his once fiery glare now subdued into contemplation, and close-ups of the crows themselves. The flags create a strange premonition-like narrative, both one representing the sun and fearing it, as the motives of national identity and internal despair are shown on display. Less in the first sense, but the representation of the rising sun which burns all isn't far from becoming a reality. Then, a shot of him walking towards something. He turns for a second as the sun is leaving the clouds. Surrounded by a mass of crows, the tree starts casting shadows as the protagonist starts looking increasingly worried. A shot of a singular flag of Japan, the red of its circle accentuated as it waves in the wind. Several shots of the crows getting up and looking at the sky, almost readying themselves for something as the sun leaves the clouds fully. The music intensifies and climaxes as the protagonist's expression widens almost with fear. He covers his face with his hands and the screen suddenly fades first to white, then to black, only to reveal a close-up of his eye twitching, now with an intensity that suggests something is very, very wrong. In a brutal, almost explosive moment, he looks terrified at his arms, which is now aflame, and not a second passes that his entire being erupts in flames. An aerial shot captures him in slow motion, the camera spinning around him as he frantically tries to douse the fire. His screams and desperate gestures amplified by the chaotic soundscapes as he claws at his skin. He screams and grasps himself. He starts frantically running between the crows as they fly away, making path for the burning man. He runs in circles as the birds surround him. We hear his screeches as it cuts to the crown of the tree in daylight, and then we see the crows fly by as we watch him fall down from the 8th floor, burning all in slow motion. Sound is cut off for this scene. Before he hits the ground, the screen fades to black and says, "Cette histoire de vampire finira mal." This vampire story will end badly. Another shot of him tumbling and spinning as he burns, and then another quiet shot of a black screen with the text El finirá quand tout le monde sera malheureux. It will end with everyone being unhappy. As you watch him tumble and hit the ground aggressively, the sound restores. In a series of aggressive, rapid cuts, the film shows him tumbling violently as he lands on a construction site. Metal boards creak under the impact and the crows take flight once more. Their cries, the final haunting refrain. The scene then shifts to the sun, and we see him burning repeatedly. A montage of his disintegration intercut with first-person shots of his hands reaching desperately towards the sun. His eyes lock onto the burning light, his face contorted in pain until the camera pans slowly and the sun transforms into the image of the Japanese flag set against the deep blue sky. As classic Japanese drum instruments strike a final resonant note, the opening sequence concludes a powerful multi-layered meditation on light, death, and the inescapable pull of fate. The rising sun has claimed another victim, and our questions have been set to be answered.